We've learned more about Trump's crypto grift. We also have some big Supreme Court decisions to digest, as well as a new take on whether the Iran war actually is ending or not. Plus some surprising primary results in Colorado and a whole bunch of new polls from key states. And my friend Stephanie Rule of MS Now is here with us for the entire episode. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who vote for progress and want to convince their friends and family members to join our majority. I'm going to start by bringing in Stephanie. Stephanie Rule is the anchor of the new morning show Money, Power, Politics with Stephanie Rule, airing Monday through Friday from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern on MS Now. Good to see you.
Great to see you. Thank you so much for having me.
We are excited that you're here, and I will tell you, our usual format is people come on and we have them for like the last 15 minutes. Sometimes we have people on for the last 30 minutes. There's been a very few people who are on. I think you're in the company of like Paul Rykoff, Michael Shore, a few others, David Axelrod.
Wow.
So, yeah, well, they're in
better deliver.
Sudeikis. We had my favorite was we had Sudeikis on the week Ted Lasso came out.
Yes, that's right. He got the full hour.
We were like, oh, that show's pretty good.
Yeah. We were right. So
you were right.
Yeah, we were right about that, and so many things we were
visionaries.
Wrong about. Like when we called Stephanie, we called the end of JD Vance's political career once in the middle of that Senate primary.
Yeah,
I put that up on my wall.
We were slightly off.
You were early. You were a little early.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say you were wrong. I think you were early.
Well done.
Well, guys, we used to joke about how Trump was a fake billionaire, but I think he's kind of gotten there. We just got his financial disclosure. He made more than $1 billion just last year off of crypto. This included $635 million in royalties linked to his meme coin, which launched just days before his inauguration.
Which has no intrinsic value, none.
No. And then more than 500 million in proceeds from a series of token sales from World Liberty Financial. And then you have the settlements where he pressured companies like Meta, Paramount, etc., to give him money.
Yeah.
Go
ahead. And let me just say, remember, this is the money that's in his financial disclosures.
Right.
And I'm not saying I know this for fact, but based on covering him for the last decade, if you think that's the only money that he made last year, then boy, oh boy, I got a bridge to sell you.
Well, it doesn't include his kids, right? So, we were pounded with stories about Hunter Biden, right? And like, what number? Like in the worst case scenario, there's never, first of all, obviously never been proven any crime that is in any way even in the vicinity of Joe Biden. But $1 million is what the worst case scenario.
$1 million sold some art that he made to a Democratic donor. Sure, all of that pales. I mean, these aren't my words. This has regularly been called the golden age of grifting, right? When it comes to all the investing in America right now, whether it's us trying to become more energy independent or to go after our own natural resources so we're not dependent on China and other countries, it's like a gold rush in the United States, except one could say, oh, investing in America so we're not dependent on other countries. This makes sense, except for the fact every time you hear about one of these deals and one of these companies that our own government is now investing in or partnering with, look under the hood and the Lutnick sons have a piece of it or the Trump sons have a piece of it. That's the problem.
So here's my question about this, which is that, I mean, obviously, probably the three of us have been outraged by this since, he became president. And I remember when it was cool to talk about the emoluments clause. And I think we even have like a clip about that, which we'll get to. But, well, actually, Ravi, let's do that. And then I will pose my big question as to what we do about this.
Get ready, because I'm about to blame the Democrats.
Okay, that's okay. You can do that. I don't know if you can do that on every show on this network, but it's allowed on this one.
Well, I think like that's a dig. Don't come after me, Biden's brothers.
It's just a joke. It's just a joke.
So wait, Ty Cobb. I had forgotten this guy existed. He looks like Wilford Brimley. This guy, I can't even believe
he looks like Ty Cobb.
I saw him last night. Chalky. I saw him last night on with Aaron Burnett. He was pure fire.
Just great aesthetic.
He looks like he's the owner of the greatest historical batting average ever. Anyway, go ahead.
Let's hear from former Trump White House lawyer Ty Cobb.
I do think that one of the line items, of course, is the commemorative coins. Several $100 million of income related to those coins. How can that be anything other than trading on his image and likeness in violation of the Emoluments Clause? With regard to the crypto, obviously that's it's a slimy industry. Certainly the way he's going around it, where he creates policies that can only enrich himself and his family, is something that I think the average American should be staggered by. But you mentioned the scale, and I think the scale here is just it's intentional. There's no question. I mean, we are seeing the greatest onslaught of corruption in the history of mankind in the last 18 months.
What a mustache.
Well, let's be clear. It was 5 years ago that Donald Trump said that crypto was a scam. He said it was a disaster waiting to happen, which could be. And maybe the most important point that Ty made right there is that Trump is now the policy maker. Okay, you could argue that in the last administration, you could argue that Gary Gensler, who's the SEC chair, was too tight on this. Or one would say he was listening to Elizabeth Warren, who doesn't have an ounce of open-mindedness for crypto. Crypto enthusiasts would make that argument. But even those I know in the crypto space very well, they're like, I cannot believe what's happening here. There's basically no governance. They've made it clear that individuals or crypto companies that that had been investigated by the DOJ have either settled or those investigations have gone away. We've seen the likes of Justin Sun, one of the biggest people in crypto, then invest in World Liberty Financial with the Trumps. I mean, this is extraordinary what we're seeing. And you can't compare it. Like, listen, any other administration, yep, there's always, like, politics is gross, right? There are always people at the edges, a family member here who's lobbying for this or there's always like little bits of yuck. And that's not unique to Donald Trump or the Republican Party. But what we're seeing right now is of gargantuan scale. Do you remember during Trump 1.0? It was a 60 Minutes interview that Kellyanne Conway did. And she was basically pushing a bracelet made by the Ivanka Trump brand. Mm-hmm. And look at this bracelet made by Ivanka. Everybody went bananas over it and talked emoluments. When Trump would try to have RNC events at one of his properties and say, oh, we need to renovate it and the government's going to pay for it. Or if foreign governments would rent entire floors at his hotel in Washington, everybody freaked out. And when Joe Biden was running against Trump, he said, this is never going to happen again. Whether it's Donald Trump or any future president, we can no longer rely on norms, or we can no longer rely on the good word or the faith in the president of the United States who put country first. Donald Trump just proved that to us. And when and if I become president of the United States, I'm going to close every one of those loopholes so that'll never happen again. And guess what happened? Neither President Biden or Democrats or Merrick Garland, take your pick, changed the rules or went after Trump for bad behavior. And now in Trump 2.0, he's horse laughing all the way to the bank right in front of our eyes. Nothing is going to slow him down.
What do you think kept us from doing? Do you think it was that instinct of, we don't do that in this country? Because you mentioned two things there. You mentioned close the loopholes, but you also mentioned essentially prosecute the offenders from the previous administration. Do you think we conflated the two and made a mistake?
Listen, or maybe they had bigger fish to fry. Like, remember, President Biden became the president coming out of COVID, right? Yeah. We were living in it through a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. Like, there were giant issues that this country was facing. Correct. Like, there was a lot happening. I'm certainly not saying Democrats were twiddling their thumbs and they didn't have unilateral control in the way that we see Republicans, the amount of control they have right now. But gosh darn it, I long for the days when we were complaining about carried interest loopholes or congressional stock trading.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it is a cautionary tale for what we do the next time around. And it brings me to.
But just remember, all that money Trump made in crypto, do you know what happened on the other side?
No.
People lost. Okay,
yeah, sure.
People lost. So for all of the gains, there are losers on the other side. Like, I think that's important not to overlook.
Yeah. Okay, so here's my political question for all of us, which is, we've been down this road before. We have talked about this a lot. And as you just pointed out, we then had 4 years and people are going to look at it and understandably say, and then you did nothing. But it So on the one hand, I would say when you're talking to somebody in your life and you're trying to convince them, talking about Trump's corruption is not a way to do it because it's now built into the system. They know about it. But on the other hand, it feels like, and we're going to get to the politics of the moment, like within Democratic primaries here later, it feels like our politics are slipping back into an era where people are mad about corruption because they're starting to see it affect their own. So
People are
change that?
furious about
Yeah.
corruption. Like, make no mistake, the fact that the president has an approval rating in the low 30s shows you that almost 70% of America isn't political, right? I would argue that the majority of Americans, they're trying to put food on their table. They want their kids to get to their baseball game. They want them to go to a good school. They want health care. They don't care about politics. But the biggest threat that we're seeing is people lose faith. Like they lose faith in government, lose faith in our institutions. That's when democracy starts to crack. And you're seeing it in these Democratic primaries. Now, people would say, oh my gosh, it's the moment of Democratic socialists. Listen, in some instances it is, but more than anything, I think it's a rage against incumbents. Okay, like the fact that Michael Bennet just lost in Colorado, he didn't lose to a super radical progressive. He lost to someone who made the argument that Michael Bennet is a DC insider who's not going to fight for you. And I think that people are just saying government sucks, right? They're watching Congress fail to create a budget, fail to balance a budget year after year, leading to government shutdown. They're watching Congress become so partisan, they get absolutely nothing done. And America is saying this system doesn't work. I want something different. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's super far right, super far left. It might in certain places, but at the very least, people are saying this doesn't work. I want something else.
Well, it's a good time to talk about what happened last night. So in Colorado, and I apologize for getting this name probably wrong, but is it Milat Kiros or Kairos?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Ousted a 15-term incumbent member of Congress in the primary. Bennett, sitting senator, lost to, I think it's Weiser, is that his name? The attorney general. And then Hickenlooper, who was viewed as the more moderate candidate, hung on barely against an insurgent candidate there. Something
that didn't get a lot of headlines, though, is we saw in smaller races in Colorado, moderate Democrats make gains in seats that are currently occupied by Republicans. So Colorado doesn't just tell one story, right? Like lots of people are looking for like the New York story of like Democratic socialists they are making huge gains. But I think the story is people are just universally saying this doesn't work. They're not saying they have a definitive one-lane solution, but they're saying the current setup they know like.
Yeah, I agree. I think people are pissed. I think some of the trend lines here are interesting. You know, there's this piece in the Times Opinion by Thomas Edsall that looks at like who is exactly the DSA, and I've seen this for a long time in New York because it tends to trend white and affluent, and that is not the recipe for success in remedying the trouncing we got in the last presidential election, where we lost grounds with everybody but the white affluent and college educated, right? We need candidates who are going to appeal to the actual working class, to black and brown voters who move towards Trump, et cetera. The thing that concerns me is not the diagnosis of the problem often, but the solutions. And having grown up in New York City, the governance of a lot of these candidates and the people they support is very questionable. It's basically, let's keep spending more and more and more. No accountability. New York City is spending $42,000 per student per year and getting mediocre results.
If that.
Yeah. And it's like, that's the part of the equation that concerns me next is like these people to a person have very pointed things to say about Gaza. But then when you start to get to the domestic issues, they're kind of bumper sticker. And then that's where I think the rubber hits the road. But this will be seen in the next couple of months. And then how many of them are in states, like running statewide in purple states versus how many are in safe blue districts? I don't know. We'll see.
Listen, it's also going to be interesting, right? Primaries are totally different from general elections. Just like people in, Democrats down in Texas were thrilled to see Ken Paxton defeat John Cornyn because they think it gives James Tallarico a better chance. What we do need are more people engaged in voting in primaries. I think that more and more people are talking about, do we need primaries to be open rather than closed? I think that would certainly make a difference. But I think, again, things are so regional, right? This idea that like the Democratic Party stands for X and Republicans stand for Y, I think it's different things in different parts of the country, right? Zohran Mamdani would win in New York. He would not win on the other side of the river in New Jersey. And the same thing that could be said for Mikey Sherrill.
Right.
It's a great point. And one of the things that I think is really fascinating about this moment is I think I've been thinking about it a little bit wrong, because as we've seen these insurgent progressive campaigns be successful, not as frequently as they are now, but gradually over the last couple of years, they've always been powered for the most part by young people when that was happening. And so then I was looking at that and understanding it through like my conversations with David Hogg, where I was going, okay, it makes sense, because if you don't remember 9/11, then you don't have a reference point for when we used to do things in an incremental way, and we all used to have a common set of values. Like, you hear people talk about it and you think they're crazy, because you just hear people keep saying, well, we need to go back to how it was. And you're like, the only thing I've ever known is a thing where I can't afford the life that, regular life that my parents had with a single job, et cetera. But I think that's well beyond that generation now.
But you make a great point, because you say David Hogg, right? None of us went to school where we had school shooter drills our whole lives. He did. And then he was a victim of a school shooting, right? They live in a totally different world, right? When we got out of school, I wasn't questioning Social Security. I wasn't saying, do I want to work for the man? I was saying, what man am I going to get a job working for? And then obviously I'm going to pay into the Social Security system. And young people now realize that the Social Security Trust Fund is running out. The most recent estimates say it's going to run out a year sooner than was even predicted, right? The median age for a first-time home buyer, I want to say, is 41 or 42. How old were you the first time you bought an apartment, a home? How old were you?
First time I bought a home, I was 24.
Yeah.
And I had, I had a GI Bill loan, but we had finished law school and we had good jobs.
But that's not even a possibility. We now have people in their 50s and 60s in this country regularly still paying off their student loans. So we should not be surprised that people are saying this does not work for me.
And that's the interesting thing about the generational conversation, is that we looked at 24, where a lot of people like in Gen Z or really young millennials, a fair amount of them swung to the right. And understandably, we all went, whoa, what did we do to lose these people ideologically? And what I'm starting to think is maybe we didn't. Maybe what those people are doing is they're looking at it going, none of you make any sense. And so I will vote against whoever's in charge, and I will vote for big swings. And I don't know that much yet because I haven't lived that much life. So as a result, a big swing can look the same to me, whether it's a blue big swing or a red big swing. And what we're seeing in these insurgent campaigns is we're seeing blue big swings. And I think the same people, the big swing voter is, swing meaning swinging a bat, not swinging back and forth, but it kind of works in both ways here. I think that's the new swing voter.
The successful politician is the one who goes to his or her home district, speaks to people, and campaigns there. Look at John Ossoff's messaging these days, right? Mm-hmm. He's not going to cover off the ball. Look at what could potentially happen in Iowa. Iowa, you don't get redder than that. But Democrats are starting to realize, especially in places like that, they need to show up and they need to speak to people. It makes no sense to me that in Donald Trump's first term and second term, he has had to put forth farm aid bills, right? He just asked Congress last week for $11 billion for farmers. Those farmers are suffering because of his immigration policies, because of his tariff policies, and because he launched a war in Iran. And yet, these are states that Donald Trump handily wins. It is incumbent upon Democrats to figure out, how do I get to that state? How do I get to those people's homes? How do I change the conversations and address the issues that plague them most? Because Donald Trump may have talked a very big game to them, especially remember when he was running in 2015, right? His MAGA base His MAGA base right now, the things that matter to them almost sound like the same things that people who are voting for Democratic Socialists are calling for. Donald Trump's new base is the richest of the rich people. The swamp that he was going to drain is now the algae-filled reflecting pool that is filled with algae and chipping paint because of a no-bid contract he gave a guy who ran a business called Green Water Solutions.
Well, we've got
So if Democrats don't take this as an opportunity to go see the people and speak to the people and not just say, does Donald Trump stink? Pick me. And actually say, here's what I'm going to do for you. I think these elections are ripe for them to win. They just have to get after it.
So we've got some Senate polling from the New York Times just to give us a snapshot of directionally where we are right now. And so North Carolina, Cooper 50, Whatley 43, Maine, Plattner 49, Collins 47, Texas, tie between Tallarico and Paxton, Iowa, Hinson 48, Turek the Democrat 46, Ohio, Husted 50, Brown the Democrat 47. So a bunch within the margin of error, Cooper being the outlier there with a 7-point lead in North Carolina, which is tremendous. My sense in looking at this, obviously it's very early, but my prediction is we're going to have a weird set of results come November. I suspect Democrats could win some shockers, including I would put Alaska there is in play, and could lose some states that we're taking for granted. That's my guess.
I think it's too soon to tell. We cannot underplay how much money are going into these campaigns, how much of a cash advantage Republicans have right now. And it's funny because we're seeing candidates get a lot of traction in these primaries who are saying, let's get corporate dollars, let's get big money out of politics. I welcome that. But look no further than yesterday when the Supreme Court made it easier for big corporate dollars, right? We're 16 years out from Citizens United, and rich people have never been as I have been around wealthy people my whole adult career life. Rich people have never, ever been as rich as they are today. Elon Musk spent almost $300 million in the last election. That's a rounding error for him now, right? He's now well into being a trillionaire. We're watching the richest people in the world have become exponentially wealthier in the last 4 years. And so while I love this idea that a lot of Democrats are pushing, like, let's get big money out of politics, that's not the reality of where they are. So I certainly hope for their sake, they're figuring out a way with much smaller coffers to get to those voters, to get to the American people who say, you want something different? Vote for me here. Thomas Massey's primary was the most expensive primary we've ever seen. And I would bet a lot of money that some of the biggest checks that his opponent got were from people who have never and will never set foot in the state of Kentucky.
The way you just, Ravi, before you go into the Supreme Court stuff, because that's a great place to go now, because it's a great segue, Stephanie. It's like you do this for a living. The way you frame that, I think, is so correct about the idea that the wealthy people are wealthier than they've ever been. And, income inequality, we understand. But I think from a partisan political standpoint, the way people listening to this need to take that in is, and people on the show maybe heard me say this before, but I think all the time about this conversation I had once with a good friend who works at Bain, who is a liberal Democrat. And his explanation to me, because he's, I asked him, how do you explain that to your colleagues? Because you must have to do it all the time. And he said, what I always say is this. I say that I am a Democrat because I'm a populist, and right-wing populists blame brown people. Left-wing populists blame rich people. I choose to blame rich people. And I think that perfectly captures the argument that is left to be made between now and November, because I think that's where we're going, is they're going to do what they always do. They're going to say, okay, well, the economy's not good, so we're not going to talk about that. So we're going to blame the brown people for that. And it's how hard can we lean into blaming, I wouldn't even say the rich people, but the enablers of those who are, well, no, I just say blame.
Yeah, but I think this move to just blame the rich and talk about the rich, like this monolith, needs to be a whole heck of a lot more nuanced, because guess what? It's part of the American dream. People hope, and people would like to be successful. They would like to be wealthy. It's this universe at that top sliver of people who have an app on their phone counting how many nights they're sleeping in New York City because they need to hop on their jet before midnight because they need to get out of the state to get to Texas or Florida or wherever the heck else they're going to. I mean,
I don't even know if people realize how common that is. That's so correct.
Okay, can I tell you how much this blows my mind? Like, I wouldn't even move to New Jersey because I didn't want one more minute of commuting away from my kids. Yet I go to parties. I'm sitting at weddings, and the richest people I could ever imagine rush out of the wedding like Cinderella, like they have got to get out of there before they turn into a pumpkin and some mice have to take them because they have to make sure they're out of the state before the tax man knows. Like, to me, and those are the people that are panicked.
Republicans, by the way.
Correct. But those are the people that are panicked that Democratic socialists are coming for them. And I'm like, baby boy, Democratic socialists aren't the one creating this. You're creating this, right? Mm-hmm. You're creating this when the average American is saying, I am struggling. I can't afford a house. I can't afford my health care. I'm worried there's not going to be any jobs in the future for me. They look at the Forbes 200 list and say, those people were mind-bogglingly rich at the end of Biden's term, and now their wealth has reached astronomical heights. That's driving Democratic socialism, not Zohran Mamdani. He's just riding that wave.
Yeah, the people I worry about are people like my mom, who's a city nurse in Staten Island, who's like, I'm not the millionaire. I've been in the same house my whole life. I'm not the millionaire trying to leave. I'm also deeply at odds with the Democratic socialists. So now I've got these two positions now, and I'm living in this world of extremism. And that's where I think when we mentioned some of these candidates, who could point the way forward in a different kind of electorate, not, can you win Queens? Can you win Williamsburg? But can you win Iowa? Right? Can you win Alaska? Can you win even Staten Island? Like where my mom lives, that's where we look to the general election and then the primaries for the next presidential to say, is there a model that can speak to the disaffected, right? While also not coming across as crazy and threatening to middle-class voters out there. And I think there are some models out there. You mentioned one in Ossoff. There are some people out there who seem to be in good standing with different segments of the party. And that level of diplomacy is more important than ever.
I honestly think, and people are going to say I'm naive, or they're going to say I'm privileged. I really do think it's candidates or it's leaders, and that could be in business or politics, who come from a place of love and not fear. People who actually believe that, strangers are friends that they haven't met yet. People who believe, the more you get to know, you care about people, the more you give people the benefit of the doubt and you're not demonizing. And again, people could say, you know what, Stephanie, you've never run an election. You don't realize that demonizing wins. Maybe demonizing wins elections, but it loses decency. And I think in turn, we start to lose democracy. And I don't think that means it's got to be moderates or it's got to be progressives or it's got to be conservatives. I think it's got to be good, honest, hardworking people that connect with their voters and try to find solutions.
Well, let's take a break. Oh, sorry.
Before we do, I want to piggyback on something Stephanie just said. Demonizing can win an election. What demonizing cannot do is it cannot build a movement. It cannot build a party. It's like any other shortcut in business or in life. You can take that shortcut and it will get you a certain, look at how many elections did we won some elections by telling everybody, hey, Trump is not like other Republicans. If you're a Republican, you can vote for us in this election and just not like Trump and still be a Republican. And we won some elections that way. What we did not do is build a party that is built to last as a result, because what we maybe could have done instead is, no, actually, that's what a Republican is, and tried to bring people over completely. And so to my point is simply that, like, you're right. And I think what that's going to come down to is you can take DSA ideas or very progressive ideas, but you have to put them, as you were talking about earlier, in the context of what people are dealing with on a daily basis. So if you're in a state in the middle of the country, no, you're not going to talk about like a rent freeze. You're going to talk about like, we want to make it so that your kids don't have to leave here to go to college if they don't, if you want them to stay, or if they do leave, we want there to be good jobs for them to do here so that you can be near your grandkids. And that's,
but you also don't have to say, you don't have to think it's a state in the middle of the country, right?
it's
Your
just
mom
not
lives,
New York City.
But point is, yeah, but it can be New York City. Your mother lives in Staten Island. My mother lives in New Jersey. And this idea, this idea of like these others, everybody's right here. And people are like, okay, ready? Take Springfield, Ohio. I don't think nobody was eating cats and dogs, right? Nobody was eating cats and dogs. However, I'm sure there was a lot of people in Springfield, Ohio, older people specifically, who said, holy cow, my city, my town has changed. My schools look different. My hospitals look different. I'm not comfortable with this. Before we jump down those people's throats and say that they're xenophobic or they're anti-immigrant or they're racist, why don't we just create some space for them to say, let's help these people. Let's find a way to get everybody at the table and not say you're 100% right or you're 100% wrong, because then we're just in this battle over were they or were they not eating a cat or a dog? Nobody was eating a cat or a dog. But as soon as we allowed the debate to be about that, we've lost the plot. And if we can actually return to some sense of normalcy of, you're right, the world is changing, the country is changing, demographics are changing. How can we find a way to make every law-abiding citizen feel seen, feel heard, and feel cared for, instead of Robbie's mom, who's like, "What? I've been living in the same house for the last 50 years. I'm a hardworking nurse, and somehow I'm forgotten." And she may say, wait a minute, we're spending more time thinking about if we're a sanctuary city and where we're going to house immigrants, and nobody's thinking about me. We have to find a way to think about everyone. And those who are saying, I'm not going to think about everybody, I'm just going to go after this side, and I'm going to get these people on my side to defeat the other side. What if we dared to not do that?
Well, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about a very busy week at the Supreme Court, and then check in with our vice president, who's had some interesting things to say about Iran when we get back. The news cycle does not come down because it's summer, unfortunately, which is why more people are becoming a lot more intentional about how they decompress. And that's where IndaCloud fits in. IndaCloud is a fully legal online cannabis dispensary for gummies, exotic flower, premium pre-rolls, zero sugar THC sodas, energy gummies, and extra strength sleep gummies. Everything is federally legal, have THC, it's lab tested and shipped discreetly to your door, because staying informed is important, but feeling emotionally overheated 24/7, that part is optional. IndaCloud has a great variety. Energy gummies for surviving overloaded summer schedules, THC sodas for staying social without overheating yourself, extra strength sleep gummies for fully shutting your brain down at night, and flower for slowing the evening down intentionally. And the world may stay overheated, your nervous system doesn't have to. If you're 21 or older, go to indacloud.co, that's .co, not .com, and use the code MAJORITY for 30% off your first subscription order. That's indacloud.co, code MAJORITY for 30% off, shipped routinely and discreetly to your door, plus free gifts on qualifying orders. And don't forget to fill out the quick survey when you order to support the show. Enjoy responsibly, and huge thanks to IndaCloud for helping everybody slow the noise down a little bit this summer. The moment you notice something's off in the bedroom, it tends to stick with you. Most guys sit on it longer than they should, but Hims makes it simple to actually do something about it, but with real treatment options 100% online. Hims connects you with licensed healthcare providers, giving you simple access to legitimate ED treatment options from home, no awkward appointments, no pharmacy lines. Just complete a simple online intake, and a provider will review your information to determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your treatment ships directly to your door. That includes sildenafil, also known as a generic for Viagra, available through Hims at up to 95% less than the brand name version. And if that option isn't right for you, there are additional treatment options available so you can find what works best for your body. It's straightforward, transparent, and designed to make getting care feel easy. To get simple online access to personalized, affordable care for ED, hair loss, and more, visit hims.com/majority. That's HIMS.com/majority. That's hims.com/majority. Not available in all 50 states. Prescription required. See website for details, restrictions, and important safety information. Sildenafil is the generic version of Viagra. Viagra is a registered trademark of Viatris Specialty LLC. Hims is not affiliated with or endorsed by Viatris. It's time for some spring cleaning. When it comes to the scent of your laundry, it shouldn't smell like the same thing you use to disinfect your bathroom. Enter Laundry Sauce, the premium scented laundry pods that don't just clean your clothes, they elevate them. Say hello to luxurious fine fragrance that lasts. Imagine stepping outside on the perfect spring morning with your clothes smelling like Australian sandalwood, Italian bergamot, or Egyptian rose. Laundry Sauce isn't just about smelling incredible, it's engineered for performance. These highly concentrated pods are packed with the cleaning power of bioenzymes that obliterate stains from muddy hikes, backyard barbecues, and that inevitable iced coffee spill. And because spring is all about fresh starts, they revive fabrics, making your favorite pieces look and feel brand new. For a limited time only, our listeners get 20% off your entire order when you use the code MAJORITY at laundrysauce.com. That's 20% off your order at laundrysauce.com with promo code MAJORITY. Laundry Sauce also just made its Target debut. Shop Laundry Sauce in select Target stores now. I realize I say sauce like a New Yorker. It's one of the last words I still say with a New York accent. But needless to say, 90% of customers now love Laundry Day because of Laundry Sauce. Turn your least favorite chore into a self-care ritual. Maybe the best part about Laundry Sauce, they offer a full money-back guarantee, and if you don't get better smelling, cleaner laundry, you get a full refund. No questions asked. So, for a limited time only, our listeners get a 20% off for your entire order when you use the code MAJORITY at laundrysauce.com. That's 20% off your order at laundrysauce.com with the promo code MAJORITY. After you purchase, they'll ask you whether you heard about them, and please support our show and tell them we sent you. It's time to make Laundry Day the best day of the week. So busy week at the Supreme Court, but historic term in many ways, because there were huge decisions that happened before this, like the tariff case. But, you know, there's a couple places we could start, but let's start with the birthright decision. The court, depending on how you count, is either 6-3 or 5-4. I tend to think of it as 6-3, upholding, or 5-4 is how I tend to think about it, but they upheld birthright citizenship. And yes, it's great that they upheld this, but what exactly the other 3 to 4 were thinking when the plain text of the Constitution is so obvious makes me very alarmed, and I think like makes it super clear that this is a straight up partisan body at this point. And the vice president, you know, who obviously wanted the decision to go the other way, also seemed to be crowing about how close this was, and probably senses that if you can win the next election, or even maybe even before that, they could tip the balance on decisions like this. Here's a video from Vance.
That's the simple fact that a lot of legal experts expected this case to go the wrong direction by 7-2 or even 8-1. The fact that this case was a 5-4 decision effectively means that the concept of birthright citizenship, which is an absurdity to the 14th Amendment, that concept is hanging by a thread. And so
He's right about that. It is hanging by a thread.
I was naive. I did not think it would be anywhere near this close. I actually thought it might have even been unanimous, which is super naive. But because logistically, I don't even know how you would unwind, which was what most of the questions from the justices were about.
Logistically, I have no idea how you would unwind this. If you think that ending temporary protected status for Haitians and Syrians is going to disrupt our country and our economy, giddy up, just you wait. But I think you've hit the nail on the head. We sort of all seem in agreement with J.D. Vance. The stunning part of this ruling is not the decision. It's that it's only 5-4. It's that Brett Kavanaugh basically said, hey, Congress, I'm going to give you boys and girls a roadmap so you can do this without us. But long story short, all it takes is 1 or 2 justices to say, I'm tired. It's time for me to retire. And Aileen Cannon is waiting in the wings to do a round off back handspring right into the Supreme Court.
Well, it didn't stop, members of the right from whining about this. Matt Walsh tweeted, it turns out that Amy Coney Barrett is a DEI hire, little better than Ketanji Jackson. Terrible pick. When's the last time we had a Republican president who didn't put a liberal justice on the Supreme Court? So they're defining it, they're great at working the refs, these people. I don't think Matt Walsh sincerely believes, what he also tweeted, which is this alarmist sentiment that his kids won't grow up in the same country he grew up in and all that. I actually don't think he's alarmed. I think this is working the refs and also signaling to his audience. And this is what they do. They work the refs. They're going to continue to pressure Barrett to try to move as much in their direction as possible. And they're going to hold out and pressure Republican senators when the time comes around where they can replace anybody on this court.
I think it's Nancy Mace said she thinks that Amy Coney Barrett should get fired.
There you go.
I mean, shouldn't we want these justices, if they truly only decide based on strict partisan party lines? That's not what our Supreme Court is supposed to be or do. Not to mention, I'm probably getting this number wrong, but it's something like 69% of Americans don't want us to touch birthright citizenship. And you started the show talking about all the inroads the president made with the Latino community. I don't know if that's going to be the case if they end birthright citizenship. And my last point would be, you're going to have to go way back in the time machine. Do you remember early on in the first Trump administration, when I believe it was Jared Kushner's sister was in Asia touting a real estate development project like high-rise condos? I think they may have been in New Jersey, when in the package it was, come here, get an apartment in the United States, have your baby here. So they've even used this as part of their real estate marketing abroad. It's stunning that they're making a move like this, but here we are.
Well, so that was one decision, and it is what it is, where obviously it's good news in the narrow sense. Jason, since you're the former Secretary of State, you want to talk a little bit about what we learned on coordinated spending?
Yeah, I think I could get this. I mean, essentially, I'm going to cut to the end of it, which is that now political party committees can transfer a lot more money to the candidate campaigns, or it incentivizes giving these much larger contributions to the committees, to the actual political party committees, as opposed to, going around this labyrinthine system we've created. And to back out and zoom out on it a little bit, what you have to remember is that there was once a society here in the United States that actually believed in, it's rather ancient now, but it believed in trying to erect certain rules to the game of political campaign finance. And that society has largely been rendered extinct, but some of its structures still stand. And some of those structures are semi-effective in like rerouting water, or in this case, money. And what this is doing is it's just saying, we don't actually need any of these leftover ruins from the system that said we should actually have rules. Now, what that means is that some of the other little tributaries that have developed around the edges, they become less relevant. So the development of super PACs, where all the money goes, so that then you see all these ads that are like paid for by, concerned citizens who own dogs, or the C4 dollars that go, those are the ads for people listening that tell you at the end to call and thank, or call and, criticize somebody, because they're not technically allowed to tell you to vote for or against a person, but that's the ads that they are. Those become a little less relevant when more of this money can go straight into the candidate campaigns from the parties, which then gives, for buying TV ads, for instance, gives you a bit of a price break that you're not getting on the dollars and super PACs and C4s.
So what is this going to mean to the American voter?
Go ahead, Ravi.
Well, I thought Sarah Isker had a good contrarian take on this. This is what she said. She said, allowing party coordination will be good for the political ecosystem, get political parties back into the game, prevent splinter groups from hijacking. It will also put super PACs at a disadvantage because they can't coordinate. My sense, Stephanie, is that this is a distinction without too much of a difference in the narrow sense, but the larger sweep of what the Supreme Court has been doing, which is their very broad interpretation of political speech and campaign finance, is the bigger story, right? Not this ruling, which I actually think isn't going to make one difference, isn't going to make a major difference. It'll just shift the money from one entity to the next.
It's probably going to help in this election. It's an advantage to the Republicans because the incumbent party has a great deal more success raising money into their party committees.
Yeah, and we hate our, centrists like me hate the DNC. Super progressives hate the DNC. Nobody's giving money to DNC. So, and the DSCC and DCCC have such bad brand. So part of it is like the party has to resurrect that. And I think all these people attacking them need to think about that, because a lot of these people like Plattner who've been attacking DSCC are now turning around asking the DSCC for money, where are they going to get that money from? Nobody wants to give to these entities anymore. I think in the narrow sense, it's less of a story. It'll change a little bit. In the grander sense, which is, this gets back to people's disaffection, Democrats' disaffection with their own members. We now have to realize that you have a 6-3 court that even if Democrats pass certain campaign finance measures through Congress, this court will strike a lot of them down. So you need the Supreme Court, which is a much longer term effort. And so now you need to get into the realm of things like court packing to change this.
And what do you think about that?
Very pro. We got an argument with Axe about this a long time ago. I'm into it. Obviously, everything comes with the caveat that they can do it to us. But the thing is, my thing is, they always will do it to us first.
Yeah, they're not waiting on us to do it first. I think that's the biggest thing we've learned. By the way, not that this matters much, but I think that one of the losers of this deal, the Supreme Court decision, is actually like local news and some cable news, because it means that there is more money available to actually buy the lower cost ads.
Yeah.
And in election years, local news and cable news are making a lot of money on being able to sell it at the full price. That doesn't matter, but just a little thing.
I think the most alarming decision that was made from the Supreme Court we haven't talked about. And it's that the Supreme Court gave Donald Trump now free reign, license to fire heads of independent agencies. Now, he carved out Lisa Cook from the Fed because this is Donald Trump's, taco, Trump always chickens out, Fed edition. If you look at the places where Trump stops, it always relates to money, investors, and the markets, right? Tariffs. It's Liberation Day. It's Liberation Day. We're going to win a trade war against the whole world, until the bond market says, are you kidding me? Tanks. And then he goes, forget it. We're not going to do that. And we're seeing that here. The Fed's independence is hugely important to our economy and to markets, right? Countries where you have not seen that be the case, where you've actually had political leaders truly influence monetary policy. I'm looking at you, Turkey. I'm looking at you for a moment, Greece. It's been devastating. One of the reasons investors from around the world, even at our worst moment, we continue, the dollar continues to be the reserve currency. We continue to be the place where international money floods. One of the reasons is because we have 3 separate but equal branches of government. We actually have checks and balances here, and we have an independent Federal Reserve. The fact that he carved out Lisa Cook just means that whether it was Scott Bessent or potentially Kevin Warsh or Howard Lutnick were like, listen, this is going to really rock the bond market. Don't do it there. But the fact that they could say, yep, you can get rid of Slaughter at the FTC is another example of Congress no longer having the control and power that they once had, and it only strengthens the power of the executive branch. To me, this was sort of the sleeper Supreme Court decision that we shouldn't sleep on.
Well, shout out to Becca. I went to law school with Becca Slaughter, who was Becca Joy Kelly back then, and her husband, Justice Slaughter. Very smart. What's fascinating is in the next year and a half, this is obviously a problem and is going to embolden Trump. If a Democrat takes over, the same tool could be used to just clean slate of everybody.
Which, by the way, Democrats can do it, but you know who loses? The American people, because then you're just going to have a more gummed up government where every few years we're going to wipe out the people in charge and start over, right? Imagine every company that you do business with, every few years, all of management gets annihilated and a new group comes in wanting to do totally different things. That is not how cohesive business runs.
And more than management, they're going after everybody. You look at how they're pushing people out throughout the Justice Department, rank and file prosecutors. It's a
the
problem.
military.
It's also terrible for business, by the way, because like when I was Secretary of State, one of the things I was in charge of was business regulation, like a huge wing of small business regulation. And obviously there were a lot of conservatives who were not thrilled about me becoming Secretary of State. But what I would say to them, and they would always agree with, is, look, my objective here is to create a set of regulations that you can plan for. And you can tell your compliance people, this is going to be the rules for a while.
Right.
And I think that when it seesaws back and forth so much, the amount that you spend on compliance and the ability to take any sort of risk at all and think that there's going to be any predictability is just gone, which is also bad for the American
Supreme
people
Court
because that's bad
deserves
for the
blame
economy.
here. Supreme Court deserves blame here too, because they used to have reliance interests. They used to have stare decisis. Now nobody respects precedent anymore, especially this conservative majority, right? They've been overturning one major precedent after another.
Precedent is for punks. That's the way they view it now.
There you go. So everything is uncertain. I'm gonna quickly just mention the other cases because we're gonna run out of time. But another major case was states can count mail ballots that arrive after Election Day if they're postmarked before. So that was a good ruling for Democrats. Another one was that states can ban trans athletes. That wasn't a surprise. There was also the temporary protective status ruling, which Jason, you and I should cover probably next week because it'll take some time, especially there's some overlap in some of the stuff you and I have been talking about for a while. But let's quickly talk about Iran before we lose you, Stephanie. So Vance has been christened the sort of spokesperson for this herky-jerky quasi deal that we have.
Vance, the one person who reportedly was in the early days saying to Trump, I don't think this is a good idea. I don't think you should do it. Trump's now like, you know what? You're going to be the spokesman for this thing. Have at it, boo.
Well, here is what he had to say. He went on Michael Knowles' podcast in the Daily Wire. This is what he had to say.
So I think what the president has told us to do is use this MOU to sort of refill the world's oil economy. Yeah. To refill some stocks and then to see where the hand is.
Yeah.
So we're on a hydration break, like the World Cup. That's what's happening, right?
Hydration break, which was also a BS created event so they could get more advertising dollars.
Right.
Okay, so let's just remember, like the hydration break, ridiculous, just like JD Vance's explanation for where we are in these negotiations. The most recent thing that we heard is it's not just Iran that now wants to get paid when you go through the Strait of Hormuz. Oman also wants voluntarily you to give a piece. So I don't know how you can slice this and say that we, the United States of America, are not worse off 123 days into this war. Like, I don't know what, even today, the president, when he was asked about it, he's like, don't forget wiping out all nuclear capabilities. There will be no nuclear capabilities there. Show me any evidence that that's the case, right? I spoke to the president myself, maybe 7-8 weeks ago, and he just wanted to hammer over and over that they were 2 weeks away from having nuclear capabilities and they plan to use them. Show me 1 ounce of evidence of that.
Well, and it's like, what if they were, what are we going to do about it? Nothing. The Wall Street Journal reports that, Trump is having all these conversations internally about what to do. And essentially he's like, I don't even respect our own August 18th deadline. Like he himself is saying, just breeze right past through it. Meanwhile, Vance is talking about this, like, we're in control. We're the ones who are taking the break so that we could re-up and blah, blah, blah. Who's taking advantage of this break is Iran. And I doubt it's going to actually be a break in that sense, but they've exported, according to reporting from the Hormuz letter, 50 million barrels of crude oil, generated $3.5 billion since the U.S. blockade was lifted just 2 weeks ago. And so that's more than double or about double their output before all of this. So they're sending more out now than they were before. And by almost every measure, this is worse. You could be like, is this worse than the Trump status quo before this? Is this worse than the JCPOA?
Yes.
How does it line up with?
Yeah, just check.
Okay, I'm going to answer that. Yes, and super, yeah.
Yeah, and then how does it line up with Trump's many shifting goals?
So with the exception, I ask you this, Jason, with the exception of true Trump loyalists who are Donald Trump ride or dies, who will contort themselves into a pretzel just to satisfy whatever his most recent argument is. Tell me what American voting bloc right now today is like, yeah, right on. I love what we did with Iran. Who are they? What are their? Who is that group?
There is one very small group that will tell you that they're happy about what's going on with Iran, and they are Jews whose entire political identity is based on what happens with regard to Israel. And now, keep in mind that there's plenty of Jews who disagree with it.
But that group is significantly smaller than that group that existed in the beginning of this war. It was Miriam Adelson a week ago in a newspaper that she owned had a headline that said he could have been the best president, but now he's not. So in the beginning of this war, you saw that sliver of super pro-Israel Jewish Americans who said, this is the right thing. I'm not sure if that's the case these days.
I agree. It's now down to the very, very small group of people who define their political views based on what Benjamin Netanyahu says they should think. And that's a really, really small group, but it exists. And that's all I can really come up with. By the way, my prediction, for the record, Stephanie, I'll make it so that you hear it too, I've said it on here a couple of times, is that the way this ends is that it doesn't end, is that at some point Trump just says, yeah, we're in this ceasefire, and he just stops actually negotiating, and the next president inherits a situation where we're technically still in a war with Iran, and we have no ability to sanction them or do anything else. I think this just kind of,
and we've paid them $1 gazillion. And from a market perspective, remember, the market keeps going up, and that's what Donald Trump loves to look at. He loves to point to, and they're like, look, he doesn't want to be in this war anymore. We're great. We're done with this. They were never thinking or caring about a nuclear threat. They just want to make sure oil is flowing again, and then they can get back to existing in an unregulated Shangri-La. And so Trump will just say, forget about, gas prices, or he's pressuring local gas stations to lower their gas price, or he's going to come for them. He's just going to say, listen, he's said it over and over that affordability is an old-fashioned term. It's not important.
Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us.
Wait, before she goes, Stephanie, tell us about the new show.
Yeah.
You can watch it any day of the week, Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Money, Power, Politics. I think that, right? So my background is investment banking. Then I worked in business television. And I think that the economy is hugely important. I think it's the number one thing people vote on. But the economy and the market are two different things. And I think business media covers business from a market perspective. And I think that we need to truly, whether it's cover corruption and grift, or actually cover the future of our economy. AI is going to change every element of the way that we live, the way we work, the way we play. And even this idea, look at this podcast that you guys are doing. While we're obviously being very critical of things this administration is doing, I don't think this conversation is bias. I think this idea of what bias is needs to get thrown out the window. The truth isn't bias. Some people just don't want to hear it. And I believe, I'm excited we're doing a show for 2 hours every morning, just walking through, here's what's happening in the world. Here's why it matters. And what are you going to do about it? And we want to bring on people that are going to actually offer solutions, whether they are in business or education or politics. The majority of the American people are not political, and they want to live their best lives. And what if we actually try to create a news program? You guys are doing it on your podcast, where we're trying to help people get better and smarter. That's the goal. I hope we achieve it.
I'm sure you will. I've been a big Stephanie Ruhle fan for a long time, and I always enjoy talking to you. And I will a quick memory that you may not remember, because you're on television every day, and I used to do it a lot, but nothing like that. Everybody kind of probably remembers where they were the moment that they realized COVID was a real thing and a scary thing.
Oh God!
I was on live television with you. And here's the moment that I remember, is that I was sitting across, it was a panel. It was like me, some, disease doctor, and then an economics guy, and then you sitting across the table. And there was a moment, this was like 2 weeks before everything shut down, where the infectious disease doctor was explaining that most of our medications and our antibiotics come from China. And I remember, like, you and I, and it was one of those moments where I kind of just forgot I was on television for a moment. And like, you and I made eye contact, and it was like not a wow, what a crazy thing to say on TV moment, but like a holy shit, we exist in this world. And he just said that thing. And,
yes.
anyway, so I was on live television on your show the moment I realized like COVID was really going to happen and was really scary. And it's just a vivid
You and I
memory
may have
for me.
realized it, but unlike members of Congress, we didn't rush to buy every possible stock that could be associated with COVID. We just went and called home and said, let's go to the grocery store.
I was like, please buy toilet paper. That's what
Correct.
happened. So
We said buy toilet paper. Members of Congress said we need to buy companies that make personal protection equipment.
Yeah,
you know what? They were
exactly. Yes,
smarter
yes.
than we were.
yeah. Well, it's great to see you. Good luck with the new show. I'm sure it's going to go
Thank you so
amazing.
much.
Thank
Thanks
you
for having me
coming
on, guys.
It was super
See ya.
fun. All right. See ya.
It's happening.
She should come on like every week.
It was great.
She was fantastic. She's always so great. It's really warm here. And it's a great thing. I don't know what's going on there.
Oh, what's happening here? I had a dinner party the other night. A lot of former arena people getting together, and on my roof. And I cooked with the Italian woman that lives next door, and cooked like 8 courses. It was crazy. It took me like 3 days to recover. Yeah,
I saw
So
some of it on
great.
Instagram.
Great view.
That's awesome.
By the way, for listeners, I got a lot of messages from people about the past 2 weeks about all the stuff that we talked about today around the primaries and DSA and all that. I've started writing like a multi-part series on my Substack. People could check it out. I actually quote some of our listeners who've sent me messages about this. And so people can go to realravigupta.substack.com to check that out. And it's I just wrote one today about Colorado, but I wrote one last week or earlier this week about New York. And so people check that out. I also had your friend Shannon Watts on the Lost
Oh
Debate
yeah,
there.
I hadn't heard it yet. How was it?
It was great. Well, it hasn't come out yet, so it's coming out. It'll come out like in 2 hours, like 5 p.m. on Wednesday, July 1st. For people.
She's always a great
check that out.
conversation.
Yeah, we were pretty pointed. Like, she and I are aligned on some of the things that are going on, and so we talked at length about the future of the party and everything. And so I think people will not be disappointed. It's not a bland episode. It's very, very pointed, and she's as on fire as I am. So.
She's also just a person who, we've had her on here a few times, and she's always really fun to talk to because, she arrived at all this as an activist. She's never had any aspiration to do anything other than be an activist for the cause she cares about. This is not like how she earns a living. Yeah. And so she's just always super candid and thoughtful.
Yeah, for sure. She was great.
And it's great. So, all right.
What's happening here? Oh, you're done. Yeah.
Oh, no.
You guys have the World Cup, though.
Yeah, that's been really fun in Kansas City.
Yeah.
I have not gone to a game because we went to the World Baseball Classic, and then we were like, that we probably have spent our international sports spectating money. But it's been really cool to have it in town. And I think the most fun part about it has been, obviously it has, on a national level, it has allowed us to demonstrate to the world that we are not our government, which has been really, really nice. There's that saying that I think goes around now that is, if you want to hate America, read the news. If you want to love America, visit America. Yeah. And I think, and there's been that aspect of it, but at a smaller level, because Kansas City is obviously the smallest city that got World Cup games. It's been really cool to see the rest of the world know us for something other than like the Chiefs and Taylor Swift. And, there's some other great things that some of the world knows us for. But there are so many people from these other countries here who are having these wonderful experiences. And then I see some of it. They go on social media and they're making videos about it for the people back home. And, we had the largest fan walk in the history of the World Cup here, like over 30,000 people. And then the stuff like Lawrence, Kansas, college town where KU is, it was the home base for the Algerian team. And so Lawrence, it being the Midwestern, hospitality place that we are, Lawrence, Kansas just was like, we're now all Algerian, and became like the whole town was like, went crazy for that team and like turned out for everything, to the point where, at their last game, the Algerians were like putting up signs, "Thank you, Lawrence," and all this stuff. So it's just been really cool to see the rest of the world become familiar with our Kansas City brand of hospitality and general coolness. That's been really fun. So
amazing. The World Cup has been awesome. And like in New York, we came on the heels of the Knicks, where now the same infrastructure is being used essentially. So you walk down the street. This happened to me last night. I was just going for a walk, and I walked through Soho, and they're just projecting, using, like they did this with the Knicks. They're just projecting it against buildings everywhere, and just in that square was all Mexicans. So it was like all Mexican fans and people who were rooting for Mexico, which, as you can imagine, is a lot of people in New York. And everywhere you go, every little pocket of New York is another fan base wearing their colors. You know, obviously it's starting to narrow down. There are fewer teams, but you just run into these packs. Some of them are just native, they're New Yorkers who come from those countries, or some of the people visiting New York. But the energy is amazing, and you just hear it, you know?
I just saw an article, I don't remember where it was, that was making the point that the United States is the perfect place for a World Cup because every team has the opportunity to feel like it's a home game.
Yes.
Because we're the only place you can go where we have people who either they or you know, they're not that far back ancestors were from those countries. And so even if it's not people who travel from that country to here, there will be fans of those teams show up in droves at the games. And that is a cool point. And it's nice to have, in the midst of everything else going on in the world, it's nice to have something where we can look at it and go, oh, this is a wonderful place. The people are great, you know? So.
Yeah. It's also reminds you, like, as a New Yorker, I don't often think of people's ethnicity when I'm interacting with them often, but then you'll be like, wow, there's this many people from Ecuador, like in our country. Like I'll just be like walking down the street in the Lower East Side, and the whole block will be people from Ecuador. I'm like, how did that happen? Like, I'm like, am I just running into people from Ecuador all day and I'm not realizing it? Like, I have no idea.
This is why going to those World Baseball Classic games in Miami, where we saw both the Dominican Republic and Venezuela play, was so incredible, because obviously there were people who visited from those countries, but mostly it was people who were either born in those countries or their parents were, and it was just very cool. And you can't really do that in any other country in the same way. So, all right. Well, you know, I guess that's a perfect way to end the episode that precedes the 4th of July. So thank you to everybody for listening. You can find me at Jason Kander everywhere. You can find Ravi at Ravi M. Gupta everywhere. Big thank you again to Stephanie Rule. Check out her new show. Please leave a 5-star review for us. Thank you to the Midas Mighty. And remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.